So it looked like we had a little dust up during the grand arrivals today for the Shakur Stevenson. We was paid to smoke in New York. We had Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney. They bumped heads. You know, things went left. And fist almost came to getting thrown, but it was just a bunch of, wrestling going on. So Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney had little words. They was exchanging little words about the belts, and Devin and Brian was exchanging. Bill and Brian Sr. was exchanging. The typical stuff. To promote the fight. Hey, you came to us for the smoke. We got you. Typical shit. Then Brian Norman raises the bar, puts his hands on Devin Haney's chest. Devin Haney ain't really like that. Got a little defensive. Got, kind of like stepped up, pressed Brian Norman Jr. And then the bodyguard comes in the mix, man, and kind of makes everything worse. Grabs Brian Norman Jr. by his shirt. Shirt looked like when a bully pull a nerd's drawers over his head. It almost looked something like that. That shit was crazy. But Brian Norman Jr., you kind of saw it like he kind of like almost threw something like an armbar almost. But shit almost got real crazy because you seen Senior getting upset. And it looked like he's about to flex on the bodyguard. Then some lady came and she tried to hit the bodyguard with a bag. This shit it could have went left. Now, when you're looking at it from the surface, you probably look at it and say, damn, this is just to promote the fight. You know what's crazy, man? You never fucking know, man. You never know these days. That could have been all planned, bro. It don't look like it, though. It looked like that shit was the real deal. But can you really be surprised if the shit was really, staged up? Now, because I'm thinking, like, bro, like, why would the bodyguard put his hands on Brian Norman Jr. like that? That could be like a fucking lawsuit, bro. I don't really know, man, because when you think about it, the bodyguard, he could have handled it a couple of different ways, but was he really wrong for, like, draping up Brian Norman? Because Brian Norman did make first contact. He did put his hands on Devin first. Like technically he did. And the bodyguard's job is to protect Devin Haney, right? So he, in the bodyguard's mind, he probably like, he put his hand on Dev. A punch might be coming soon. I don't know. So let me get this motherfucker out the way. He could have thought like that. Or he could have simply got in the middle and said, no, don't touch him. Back up. He could have just did that and it probably wouldn't have got as far as it did. But ultimately, who was responsible for this? Brian Norman Jr. was. You know what I mean? He made first contact, and that's what led to everything. The bodyguard, one could argue that he escalated it, but Brian Norman Jr., he's the one that initiated first contact. It's just like, if we out with our boys, we see somebody we don't like, and we know it's going to be static or whatever, and like, damn, okay. Everybody start talking, both sides, exchanging words, and somebody throw a pretzel or some shit, or a piece of cotton candy or something, I don't know, a pizza slice or whatever, something just get thrown at somebody. I don't know if y'all remember that movie. Remember Cooley High? Remember they was in the movie theater, and they both, all the two sides riffing, and somebody hit something in the head with the shoe. That was all it took. You know what I mean? So, yeah, ultimately, Brian Norman Jr. was responsible for the entire thing, in my opinion. But the bodyguard, he could have de-escalated it. You know what I mean? Because Brian Norman's, his first contact was just finger touching nonetheless, but just finger touching. He ain't really have to. He could have just swatted his arm out the way. That would have been like equal force, almost like, don't touch him. Like he had the right to push Brian Norman though, but I don't think he should have went as far as dragging his shirt over his head. Like I said, I don't know. We don't know what was going through his mind. He could have thought a punch was coming, because Dev looked like he was ready to throw a punch or something like that. Dev was mad, you know what I mean? And then, Brian Norman could have threw a shot at Dev, or this whole thing could have been staged. because they're like, okay, let's do this to promote the fight. You know what I mean? Cameras is already on us. Yo, we want the bodyguard. We're going to let the bodyguard grab Brian Norman Jr. We're going to have Brian Norman touch Dev and then have the bodyguard. Because, I mean, real shit. Like, most bodyguards probably wouldn't have went that far. But it looked like that shit was real, though. It did. It did look real. If that shit was fake, they did a damn good job. You know what I'm saying? But it looked like it was real. I'm just trying to look at this from different aspects. But thankfully, no punches were thrown because we don't need nobody going to jail, no lawsuits. Right before that ruined that ruined the fight. You know what I'm saying? And we don't need that, man. So if it's, it just was probably, if this was official, it probably was a bunch of, emotions and everything, a lot of shit, bravado going on. They probably cool now, calm down, cooler heads prevail. But if they really into they really don't got no bad blood with each other. So that's why I'm thinking this shit is a little weird to me, but I can understand how shit could get a little crazy when it comes to, who wanted to fight more than the other and all that other shit. I get it. But man, that shit could have went all the way left if it was official, and I'm glad it didn't. Shout out to both sides for giving us a little bit of entertainment. You know what I mean? But we don't need no more of that shit, bro. Like no more touching, man. Keep your hands to yourself, and this shit won't happen. My take, just my take on it. But anyway, let me know what you think, man. It's Rebel Life Boxing. Catch y'all on the next one. I'm off this.